Ethan Miller had seen more than his fair share of pain. As a former Marine, he returned from Afghanistan with a chest full of medals and a mind full of nightmares. Sleep was a battle. Crowds triggered anxiety. The world had moved on without him, and he often felt like a ghost trapped in his own country. He tried therapy. He tried medication. But nothing helped quite like Max. Max wasn't the strongest or fastest dog at the shelter. In fact, he was sick with kennel cough and missing a cone. Patch of fur on his side. But when Ethan walked past his crate, the dog stood up, looked him in the eye, and wagged his tail once, as if saying, "You and me will be okay." That was 6 years ago. Since then, Max had become more than just a companion. He was Ethan's shadow, his confidant, his reason to get up every morning. When night terrors shook Ethan awake, Max would leap onto the bed and lay beside him until the shaking stopped. When Ethan had flashbacks during grocery store runs, Max would nudge his leg, grounding him in the present. People called Max a service dog. Ethan called him family. Their bond was silent but powerful, built on shared pain and mutual healing. They spent their days hiking the Oregon trails, sitting by the river, or just being together on the porch. No words were needed. They just understood each other. But one cold morning in late October, something felt wrong. Ethan had just poured Max's food when he noticed the dog hadn't come bounding into the kitchen like usual. He called for him once, twice, silence. Concerned, he walked out into the backyard and saw Max lying motionless in the grass, breathing heavily, eyes glazed. "Max!" Ethan shouted, rushing to his side. Max lifted his head faintly, his tail twitching once, but he couldn't stand. Panic flooded Ethan's chest. He wrapped Max in a blanket and carried him to the truck, his heart racing. Every red light felt like a lifetime. Every breath Max took seemed slower than the last. At the emergency animal hospital, the vet technicians took Max in immediately. Ethan waited, pacing the cold lobby, trying to prepare himself for the worst. When Dr. Avery came out, her face was somber. "It's cancer," she said gently. "Aggressive. It's already spread to his lungs and spine. I'm afraid, there's not much time." Ethan's world went still. The thought of losing Max was like losing a part of himself. How could he let go of the one soul who had stood by him when everyone else disappeared? The vet explained that Max wasn't in unbearable pain yet, but it would get worse. The kindest option was euthanasia soon. Ethan nodded numbly. "Can we wait a few days?" he asked. Dr. Avery agreed. That night, Ethan lay on the floor beside Max, wrapping him in the same blanket they'd taken on every camping trip. He whispered stories from the war about how he used to cry silently at night before Max came into his life. Max licked his hand once, as if he understood. Over the next 3 days, Ethan cooked Max's favorite meals: steak, bacon, even peanut butter pancakes. He took him on a final drive through the mountains, windows down, wind in Max's fur. Despite the dog's weakness, Max managed a tail wag each time Ethan looked over. And when the day of the final goodbye arrived, Ethan wrapped Max in his arms and whispered, "You saved me. I wish I could save you." At the clinic, time stood still. Max rested his head on Ethan's chest, his breathing shallow. Ethan choked back tears. This was it. The end. One last moment together. But just as the vet prepared the injection, Max did something no one expected. He whimpered, then raised his head slowly and looked straight into the vet's eyes. Dr. Avery froze, her fingers inches from the syringe. She had seen countless goodbyes, but something about this moment felt different. Max's eyes, glassy and tired just moments ago, now glimmered with something else. Awareness, resistance, even determination. Ethan noticed it too. Max shifted his head slightly and let out a low, soft whine. Then, incredibly, he tried to sit up. His front legs trembled under his weight, but he managed to lift his chest just enough to press against Ethan's. The gesture wasn't just reflex, it felt deliberate. Like a final play. Dr. Avery slowly lowered her hand. I want to recheck him, she said quietly. Ethan, still holding back tears, looked up in confusion. What do you mean? I can't explain it, she said, glancing between the dog and the screen that had displayed Max's vitals minutes ago. But I've seen dying dogs. Max doesn't look like one right now. With Ethan's hesitant nod, the syringe was set aside, and Max was gently placed back on a stretcher. A vet tech wheeled him into the scan room for an ultrasound and another blood panel. Ethan stood outside, barely breathing. His heart was torn between desperation and the tiniest flicker of hope. Had something changed? Or was Max simply giving everything he had for one last goodbye? Inside the room, Dr. Avery ran her probe over Max's abdomen. She stared at the monitor with furrowed brows. Something wasn't right, but in the best possible way. The mass that had once measured nearly 7 centimeters now appeared smaller, considerably smaller. Her eyes widened. She called in another vet, Dr. Lenz, to confirm. Look here, she pointed, showing a comparative scan from 3 days earlier. This tumor has reduced in size by nearly 40%. That's not possible, Dr. Lenz whispered. I know. Blood work results arrived moments later. While still not perfect, some markers were improving slightly, but noticeably. By the time Max was wheeled back out, Ethan's nerves were raw. Is he okay? He asked. Dr. Avery took a breath. Ethan, I don't know what's happening, but Max's tumor is shrinking. It's not gone, but it's significantly smaller than it was just 3 days ago. His vitals are also better than expected. Ethan blinked, stunned. So, he's not dying? I'm not saying he's cured, she clarified. But I think we need to pause and run more tests. Something is happening inside him, something worth understanding. Tears filled Ethan's eyes again, but this time they weren't from grief. He's fighting, he whispered. Max, now resting on the floor beside Ethan, reached out with a weak paw and placed it on his knee. That night, they returned home. Ethan carried Max inside, gently laid him on the couch, and sat beside him for hours. Every breath Max took now sounded stronger, steadier. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. The image of Max trying to sit up burned into his memory. The next day, Dr. Avery called with a question. Ethan, I need to ask, has Max been on any supplements or medications recently that you didn't tell me about? Ethan thought hard. Only his joint powder. I ordered it online last month. Can you bring it in? When Ethan arrived with the bottle, Dr. Avery examined the label closely. The packaging was odd, not FDA approved, and containing ingredients she didn't recognize. She took a photo and sent it to a veterinary toxicologist. An hour later, she called Ethan back. This isn't a joint supplement, she said. It's something else entirely, and it might be the reason Max's cancer is reversing. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Dr. Avery responded quietly. You may have accidentally given Max a miracle. Ethan sat in the clinic's waiting room, the strange supplement bottle still in his hands. The label was in English, but the fine print listed ingredients he didn't recognize. It hadn't even arrived in a proper box, just a plain brown package. From an overseas seller. He'd ordered it weeks ago, thinking it was a joint support mix for Max's aching hips. Now, Dr. Avery believed it might be something far more powerful. She returned from her office, phone still in hand, her face a mix of disbelief and awe. I just got off the phone with a veterinary researcher at Oregon State University, she said. That supplement contains a rare immunomodulator compound 1 that's currently under trial in Europe for treating aggressive tumors in dogs. Ethan blinked. You're telling me? I gave Max cancer medicine by accident? In a way. Yes, Dr. Avery said. It's not FDA approved here yet, which is why you could order it online so easily. But it's designed to stimulate a dog's immune system in a very specific way, telling the body to treat tumors like infections and attack them. Ethan sat back in his chair, speechless. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help his joints. Dr. Avery smiled gently. You may have done much more than that. Over the next few days, Max underwent a full range of diagnostics under the supervision of veterinary oncologists. Each test brought more stunning results. The tumor continued shrinking. The inflammation around his spine had reduced. His appetite was coming back. And most surprising of all, his energy levels were climbing. He was still tired, still healing, but no longer dying. News of Max's turnaround spread quickly. The research team at Oregon State asked Ethan for permission to document the case. In a study, photos of Max's scans and medical charts were circulated among veterinary circles. Several specialists called it unprecedented. Others called it a fluke, but to Ethan, it didn't matter what the science said. All he cared about was the look in Max's eyes when they played tug-of-war again for the first time in weeks. The playful spark, once lost, had returned. Still, he couldn't shake one question. What if he hadn't given Max that supplement? One careless click, one misread label, had accidentally given his dog a second chance at life. One evening, as Max lay beside him on the living room rug, Ethan opened his laptop and started writing. He needed to get this story down, every emotion, every tear, every moment from that day at the clinic. He titled the document, The Last Hug That Saved Us Both. It started as a journal entry, but as the days passed and Max continued improving, it grew into something more. Ethan reached out to veteran organizations, PTSD forums, and animal rescue groups, sharing Max's story. People began writing back, hundreds of them. Soldiers who had lost service dogs. Cancer patients clinging to hope. Families who just needed to believe that miracles could happen. Meanwhile, the research team kept digging into the compound. They believed it could revolutionize cancer treatment. For dogs, maybe even beyond that. They asked Ethan if Max could be enrolled in a full clinical trial. Ethan agreed without hesitation. He saved me from my darkness, he told the lead researcher. If he can save more lives now, it's what he'd want. Max, the once dying dog who clung to his owner for one last hug, had not only survived, he had become a beacon of hope for others. And somewhere deep down, Ethan believed that Max knew it all along. As news of Max's recovery spread, the story drew attention from more than just veterinarians. Local journalists showed up at the animal hospital, intrigued by the mysterious case of the dog who beat terminal cancer. The headlines read, "Miracle Dog Defies Death." Ethan didn't care for the media attention at first, but he allowed interviews because he wanted people to hear the truth about love, trauma, and the unseen bond that can change everything. What amazed doctors and scientists the most was that Max's recovery wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating. By the third week of the clinical trial, the tumor was nearly gone. The research team confirmed that the compound Ethan had mistakenly given Max had triggered an extremely rare immune response, now referred to as tumor autocytolysis. Max's body had not only recognized the cancer, it had launched a full-scale internal attack. The researchers nicknamed it the Max response. But while science caught up with the miracle, Ethan and Max were focused on something deeper: life. They were walking again, longer each day. Max could now climb into the truck by himself, his legs stronger with each week. They returned to their favorite hiking trail near the Columbia River Gorge. For the first time in months, Ethan watched Max race ahead and bark at the wind like he used to. On one of those hikes, Ethan sat by the river and thought about the past 6 years, the sleepless nights, the therapy sessions, the loneliness that had once lived inside him like a second shadow. Max had been there through all of it. He remembered lying on the floor with a bottle in his hand, contemplating the end, only to feel Max's wet nose nudging him toward the light. "I should be the one saving you," Ethan whispered to him. Max responded with a happy grunt, rolling in the grass beside him, carefree. Back at the veterinary center, Dr. Avery and her team were preparing to submit Max's full case study to a global conference on veterinary oncology. Researchers from Europe reached out to examine the immune compound's potential in human trials. What started as an accidental dose was now paving the way for future treatments. Ethan was invited to speak at a university seminar, something he never thought he'd do. Standing before a hall full of scientists, veterans, and dog lovers, he simply said, "This dog didn't just survive cancer. He survived war with me. He walked through trauma, loss, and fear, and now he's walking back toward life." The room gave him a standing ovation. Afterward, a young woman approached Ethan in tears. She had lost her service dog just a month earlier and had fallen into a deep depression. "I was ready to give up," she admitted, "but Max's story, it gave me hope again." That was when Ethan realized something profound. This wasn't just about Max anymore. Max had become a symbol of something bigger: survival, healing, the unspoken strength found in loyalty and love. And most of all, the belief that no matter how final something seems, there's always a chance for the story to change. Veteran hospitals reached out next. They wanted Max to visit as a therapy dog. Ethan wasn't sure at first. Max was still healing, but Dr. Avery gave her full support. "He's strong enough," she said, "and he was born for this." Max received his therapy certification within a month. His first visit was to a center for veterans struggling with severe PTSD. Ethan watched as Max walked from one soldier to another, pressing his head against trembling knees and resting beside broken souls. Some cried. Some smiled for the first time in weeks. Ethan stood in the corner, filled with pride. Max wasn't just a miracle dog anymore. He was a healer. Max's journey from the edge of death to vibrant life had become more than just a personal victory. It was now a national inspiration. Videos of his recovery were shared across social media. Headlines told the world about the dog who beat cancer and helped a soldier heal. But Ethan never let the spotlight distract him. His only mission was to follow Max's lead quietly, humbly, and purposefully. Each week, they visited a different veteran center. Max's presence alone changed the energy in every room. Soldiers who hadn't spoken in days would reach out to pet him. Some simply knelt beside him, tears falling silently into his golden fur. Ethan watched in awe. The same comfort Max once gave him was now being passed to others in need. During one session, a Marine named Carlos, who had refused therapy for months, sat with Max for nearly an hour without saying a word. But the next week, he walked into group therapy for the first time. When asked what changed, he simply replied, "The dog listened." Word spread quickly. Requests came from children's hospitals, cancer wards, and grief counseling groups. Max's gentle nature made him welcome everywhere. Ethan and Max became something of a healing team. A quiet, four-legged miracle, and his loyal companion, offering hope to the hopeless. Meanwhile, the scientific world continued to study Max's transformation. The supplement Ethan had given Max, now identified as an experimental immune-boosting compound called RGV-7, was fast-tracked for further trials. Max's name was listed in every research paper. Scientists called it the Max Protocol. He had become a case study, a catalyst, And an emblem of unexpected breakthrough, Dr. Avery was invited to speak at veterinary conferences around the country. During one presentation, she stood before a crowd of leading experts and said, "I was seconds away from ending Max's life. But something made me stop, and that something changed everything we thought we knew." While Ethan respected the research, he still believed something more powerful had been at work. "Science can explain the healing," he often said, "but love is what woke it up." At home, life became peaceful again. Ethan and Max returned to their routines, morning walks, shared breakfasts, and lazy afternoons on the porch. But everything felt richer now. Every breeze was a gift. Every tail wag, a reminder that time was precious. One quiet morning, Ethan found an email in his inbox from a major publishing house. A scout had read the journal entries Ethan had shared online and wanted to discuss a book deal. At first, Ethan was unsure. His story was personal, intimate. But when he looked at Max, curled at his feet, he thought of all the people who'd been touched by their journey. So he said yes. He spent weeks pouring his heart onto paper, recounting the night terrors, the isolation, the bond that grew from pain. He wrote about Max's collapse, the vet's hesitation, the accidental supplement, and the miracle that followed. Every page was raw, honest, and filled with gratitude. The book was titled The Last Hug That Saved Us Both. It was released quietly at first, but word of mouth turned it into a phenomenon. Bookstores across the country sold out. It topped bestseller lists within weeks. Readers called it life-changing, a tearful reminder of love's power, and a story that gives hope when nothing else can. Ethan didn't care for fame, but he welcomed the impact. He began receiving letters from all over the world, from cancer patients, widows, veterans, and dog lovers, people who just wanted to say, "Thank you for sharing Max with us." And Max? He just wagged his tail and climbed into Ethan's lap like he always had. The success of The Last Hug That Saved Us Both opened doors Ethan had never imagined. Overnight, he and Max went from quiet companions to national figures of hope and healing. Invitations poured in from television shows, nonprofit galas, schools, and military organizations. Ethan hesitated at first. He had spent years avoiding crowds. But Max's gentle nudge and eager tail wag told him what he needed to know. It was time to go out into the world, not just to share their story, but to help others write new ones. Their first major event was a National Veterans Conference in Washington, D.C. Ethan stood nervously behind the curtain as Max waited calmly. By his side, the MC introduced them. "Please welcome the man and the dog who taught us that even in the face of death, love fights back, Ethan Miller and Max." The applause was thunderous. Ethan walked on stage, heart pounding. He wasn't used to public speaking, but when he looked down at Max, who sat proudly by his feet, the nerves faded. "I didn't save Max," he began, his voice steady. "Max saved me first. And when I thought he was dying, he gave me one more gift, the strength to keep living." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Ethan told them about the days in darkness, the night he almost gave up, and the dog who refused to let him fall. He spoke of the accidental miracle, the immune compound, and the vet who listened to her gut. When he finished, the entire room stood in applause. Veterans, scientists, families. Some wiped tears, others saluted. Max, wagging his tail, seemed to understand that this moment wasn't just for them. It was for everyone they now represented. After the event, a foundation offered to sponsor a national outreach program in Max's name. The mission was simple: provide therapy dogs to veterans in need. Ethan agreed immediately. It was a way to multiply what Max had given him. The Max mission launched within 2 months. Dozens of rescued dogs were trained and matched with veterans battling PTSD and trauma. Ethan and Max visited every pairing, personally delivering the dogs to their new homes. The emotional moments were overwhelming, grizzled soldiers breaking into smiles, silent men suddenly speaking, lonely women finding joy again. At each stop, Ethan handed them a signed copy of his book. On the inside cover, he wrote, "Let love lead the way, Max taught me that." Meanwhile, the medical research continued evolving. With Max's permission, as if he had a choice, the U research team used blood samples and genetic markers to better understand his immune reaction. What they discovered shocked even the most experienced scientists. Max's body didn't just react to the compound, it learned from it. His cells remembered the cancer and developed resistance markers never before seen in canines. Researchers speculated that this kind of adaptive immune memory might one day apply to humans. It became known as max immunoretention, a potential game-changer. In a rare televised interview, Dr. Avery sat beside Ethan and shared her thoughts. Sometimes science walks through the front door. Other times it comes in the form of a mistake, a feeling, or even a dying dog who refuses to die. Max, now fully healthy and a little grayer around the muzzle, remained blissfully unaware of his fame. He still preferred peanut butter snacks, belly rubs, and naps in the sun. But Ethan could see something deeper in his eyes now: wisdom, pride, and maybe even the understanding that he had done something extraordinary. And so, while researchers chased answers and readers devoured the book, Ethan and Max did what they always had. They lived quietly, lovingly, and gratefully. Months turned into a year, and Max was stronger than ever. Though his muzzle had grown silver and his steps slightly slower, his spirit remained youthful. Every time Ethan reached for the leash, Max jumped with excitement. The world had changed. Around them, media coverage, medical journals, speaking tours, but for Max, life was simple. Stay close to Ethan and spread joy wherever he went. The Max mission had now expanded to over 30 states. Veterans who had once been lost in silence were speaking again, laughing, connecting, rebuilding their lives with therapy dogs by their side. Some even formed support groups, gathering monthly for hikes, barbecues, and bonfire chats with their canine companions. Ethan attended as many as he could, bringing Max along as the honorary guest. Everywhere they went, people wanted to meet the dog who refused to die. One afternoon in Austin, a teenager approached Ethan after a public talk. Her name was Emily, and she had recently finished chemotherapy for leukemia. She handed Ethan a copy of The Last Hug That Saved Us Both, battered and covered in sticky notes. "This book gave me hope," she said. "When I was sick and scared, I read it to my dog every night. I thought if Max could beat cancer, maybe I could too." Ethan was speechless. He bent down, hugged her gently, and let Max rest his head on her lap. Emily smiled through tears and whispered to Max, "Thank you for saving me." Stories like hers poured in from around the globe. Ethan kept a wooden box at home filled with handwritten letters, emails, and photos, each one a tribute to Max's impact. From war veterans in Alaska to pediatric patients in Brazil, Max's story had become a symbol of survival, courage, and the unseen power of love. But behind the spotlight, Ethan remained the same grounded soul he had always been. Despite public recognition and awards, he never forgot the long, dark years before Max entered his life. Fame didn't erase the pain, but Max had helped him carry it differently. One evening, as they watched the sun set over their Oregon hillside, Ethan spoke softly. "You know, buddy, we were both broken once, and somehow we healed each other." Max responded with a soft grunt and laid his head in Ethan's lap. That night, a major network aired a documentary titled The Dog Who Healed the World. It featured footage of Max's medical journey, interviews with Dr. Avery, and raw, Emotional clips from veteran homes and hospitals Max had visited. The final scene showed Ethan and Max walking side by side into a children's cancer center. Sunlight streaming behind them. The documentary went viral. Viewers called it the most beautiful story of the year. Celebrities shared it. Politicians referenced it in speeches. Animal rights organizations began campaigns encouraging adoption of shelter dogs, highlighting Max as proof that rescue animals can change and save lives. Donations flooded the Max Mission Foundation. With that support, Ethan helped open the first Max Therapy Center, a healing facility where veterans and trauma survivors could spend time with trained dogs in peaceful nature settings. On opening day, a massive mural painted on the building's side showed Max leaping through the woods, tail high, eyes full of life. Underneath it read the words, "Born to rescue, trained to heal, destined to inspire." Ethan looked up at it, hand on Max's head, and felt a lump in his throat. All of it, from the battlefield to the backyard to the brink of death, had led them here. And somehow, through chance and love and something no science could fully explain, Max had become more than just a survivor. He had become a legend. Years passed, and Max remained by Ethan's side, older now, slower in his steps, but still full of warmth. His golden coat had faded to cream, and his eyes carried the wisdom of a life well lived. Wherever they went, people still recognized them. Children would point, veterans would salute, and strangers would thank Ethan for sharing Max with the world. But time is a river that spares no one, not even miracle dogs. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan woke to find Max still curled at his feet, just as he had done every day for years. But this time, Max didn't lift his head. His breathing was shallow, and his tail twitched weakly. Ethan sat beside him, gently brushing his fur, tears already forming. He knew this moment would come, but knowing never made it easier. Dr. Avery arrived at their home quietly, respectfully. She knelt beside Max, her stethoscope trembling slightly as she listened to his heart. "He's fading," she said softly, "but he's not in pain." Ethan placed his forehead against Max's and whispered, "You don't have to fight anymore, buddy. You did more than enough." As the sun rose over the hills, Max gave one final breath, nuzzled Ethan's hand, and peacefully passed. The world mourned. Newspapers printed tribute columns. Social media was flooded with stories, photos, and tearful farewells from people who had never even met Max, yet felt like they had known him forever. Candlelight vigils were held at therapy centers, veteran homes, and dog shelters. Ethan didn't speak publicly at first. He grieved quietly, surrounded by the memories of a dog who had once saved him from the darkest depths of despair. The house felt empty, even though it was filled with books, plaques, and reminders of the journey they had shared. Then, one morning, Ethan walked out onto the porch with a cup of coffee, as he had done with Max so many times. A gentle breeze stirred, and, for the first time in days, he didn't feel alone. In that moment, he realized something. Max hadn't really left. He was in every life they had touched, every dog that had been rescued, every soldier who had found peace. And that was when Ethan knew what came next. He returned to the Max Therapy Center, not just as a founder but as a mentor, helping others train dogs for emotional healing. He spoke to young veterans about survival and rebuilding. He helped expand the Max mission globally, starting chapters in Canada, the UK, and Australia. Then, one spring afternoon, he adopted a puppy, a golden retriever with floppy ears and a clumsy bounce. He named him Chance. Ethan never tried to replace Max. That was impossible. But he understood now that Max's real gift wasn't just his companionship. It was teaching Ethan how to live, how to love, and how to keep giving that gift to others. Chance soon became a certified therapy dog, Just like Max, and though Ethan's heart still carried scars, he smiled more often now. When he looked at Chance chasing butterflies in the field where he once sat with Max, he felt peace. Years later, Ethan wrote a final chapter to his best-selling book and released a second edition. It ended with these words: Max didn't just survive cancer. He didn't just help me through war. He didn't just inspire a movement. He gave me a second chance. And when the time came, he left this world not in pain or fear, but in peace, knowing his mission was complete. He died the way he lived, wrapped in love. Max's portrait still hangs above the fireplace, not as a reminder of loss, but as a symbol of everything gained. And every time someone walks through the doors of the Max Therapy Center, they're greeted by a plaque that reads, "In loving memory of Max, the dog who saved the man, changed the world, and showed us all what love can do."